I'm 28F and sure if it's time to draw boundaries with my boyfriend 28M and his coworker late 20SF who he got close to very quickly. First, some background and the good stuff. I have been best friends with my boyfriend since 2013. We even lived together during graduate school for 2 years before we started dating. We started dating in 2016 when we were roommates, so we've been together for about 2.5 years now and have lived together for a lot of that time. We did a brief stint of long distance when we got jobs in different locations after school. In January of this year, he moved states to be with me, and I still can't get over how amazing that was of him. We are now living together again in our own apartment, and we couldn't be happier. He is my best friend and absolutely the person I plan to spend the rest of my life with. He's smart, funny, an absolute sweetheart and a romantic, and he makes me feel so loved every day. We have talked about our future many times and I'm anticipating a proposal in the near future. Also, he has had many female friends during our time together and this has never bothered me. I'm rarely the jealous type. He's hung out one-on-one with girls before and I had no complaints. There has been one girl I told him I was uncomfortable with and he stopped hanging out with her, but that was for a lot of reasons and not just because she's a girl. So on to the recent issue. After moving to my state, he had to pass a couple of tests in our field before he could start working. He did so and was able to secure a job in early June. He likes his new job so far and generally likes and gets along with his coworkers, but he hadn't really made any real friends yet. He's hung out with my coworkers' sort of friends too. I'm also pretty new to the area and likes them as well, but no one he would hang out with one-on-one. I know he is missing having a group of friends back in his home state where he moved from. About a month ago, maybe a little more, he started mentioning one coworker a lot. We'll call her Liz. At first, it was just in passing, oh my coworker Liz said this or that. It also turns out Liz used to work with an organization that works closely with my organization. So she knows a lot of people that I work with and what's going on with my job and field of work. So it was a small world kind of thing. She would mention someone I knew, or something about my job, and he would tell her he also knew that person because of me, that kind of thing. But he started talking about her more and more often. I'm talking probably every single day. Over for a few weeks, he would have a story about Liz or something that she said, so I knew they were talking or hanging out at work a lot. He did say that Liz mentioned she wanted to meet me, and she has a fiance that she lives with, so that made me feel good. Nothing to worry about, and I was happy he was making a friend here. Liz actually lived nearby us, in a temporary place because they were moving around for her fiance's job. So a couple of weeks ago, he tells me that Liz suggested they start carpooling to work together. Their office is about 30 minutes away without traffic, but our city always has traffic, so it's more like 45 minutes each way most days. Honestly, this made me a little uncomfortable, since this meant they would be spending 1-1.5 hours alone together in the car every time they rode together. But I didn't say anything because they wouldn't be carpooling every day. Some days they work in the office and other days they work on projects around town. So this would only be days when they both go into the office, maybe 2-3 days a week. Besides, he only mentioned it in passing as an idea at first. A few days later, as he was headed out the door, he said, "Okay, I'm going to go pick up Liz and head into work." I was surprised because he never told me. They decided to definitely start carpooling together, but it obviously wasn't a big deal. He has never mentioned it again. So as far as I know, that's the only day they've ridden together. It hasn't been an ongoing thing. I was fine with this. Things started intensifying quickly last week though. As I mentioned, Liz and her fiancé were in a temporary place before, so they decided to start looking for a permanent apartment. My boyfriend casually mentioned to me one day last week that they were actually interested in our building and that they wanted to come see it the next day. This came out of left field to me. Our building is very nice. It's a luxury building in a good area downtown, but there are also tons of similar buildings in the area. But I figured they were just checking out all kinds of places and ours was probably one of many on the list. So late last week, they came by our building for a tour. I actually saw them briefly on the elevator and we met for the first time, but they were being given a tour by management, so we didn't hang out. Well, later that night, Liz texted my boyfriend that they decided to rent in our building. I honestly didn't know what to say because I wasn't thrilled. I felt like now they will definitely want to start carpooling together every day they can, and they will start becoming even closer. My boyfriend was obviously very happy about it when he told me. I just kind of asked if they were looking at any other places and why they weren't looking any closer to where she and my boyfriend work. And he said they just really like this building and her fiancé works more closely to our area, so it works for them to live here. Obviously, there was nothing I could say, so I just said cool. Ever since then, I feel like they have already been talking more and more. They text and have called each other a couple of times. To be fair, as far as I know, it has all been either work or apartment related. But I also don't really see his phone and have no idea how much they actually talk. A couple of final things prompted me to write this post. Up until now, I wasn't thrilled about all of this, but could deal with it. This weekend, we traveled to visit my family for the holiday weekend. Yesterday, during a family lunch, he got up and went into the other room with his phone for a few minutes. When he came back, I asked, "Where'd you go?" And he just said I was getting a phone call. Later, I asked who was calling him at lunch. He said it was Liz with a few questions because they were moving in at the time. This slightly bothered me because I feel like if I hadn't asked, he wasn't planning to tell me it was Liz who called. He went back to our city last night while I am staying in my hometown with my family for a couple of extra days. While driving him to the airport, I got a random thought, so I asked, "You're just going to take an Uber back home, right?" That's how we got to the airport. He kind of hesitated and then said I was actually going to see if maybe Liz could pick me up, so I don't have to spend money on an Uber. Yet again, I felt like he never would have mentioned this to me if I hadn't asked. Also, we live close to the airport, so an Uber is not expensive, and he makes good money. I reminded him that Liz and her fiancé were moving that day and probably did not want to come pick him up at the airport. I would have said this for anyone. Moving sucks, and he thought about it and agreed. He didn't end up asking her. I don't know what to do from here. On one hand, I am genuinely glad he's making a friend. There are no red flags so far. Things seem 100% platonic. Plus, she has a fiancé, so we could all be couple friends. On the other hand, he seems to be getting really close to her really quickly. He talks about her constantly, a lot more than I explained in this post. They are probably going to be riding together often, and I feel like he is starting to unconsciously or not kind of hide some interactions with her from me. Is it time to set boundaries? If so, what would reasonable boundaries even be? Is carpooling together too much? Is it okay for them to hang out alone together outside of work? I have no idea, and I've never been in this situation before. I don't know how to talk to him about this. I just feel like we need to have a talk now that she is living in our building. But maybe I should wait and see if things escalate. Update: a lot has happened since my last post, and I got some good advice there, so I wanted to post an update. After I made the last post, I came home from the trip with my family a couple of days later. I told my boyfriend that I wanted to talk to him about something, and I brought up his friendship with Liz. I basically brought up all of my concerns from the post. I told him that I didn't want to discourage him from having a friend, but I also felt like they were talking quite a lot and spending a lot of time together, and that it was starting to make me feel uncomfortable. My boyfriend took it really well. He immediately reassured me that he only saw her as a friend, and that he hadn't even realized how it could look to me. When I brought up how I felt like he wasn't being forthcoming with information, like how he didn't mention the phone call from her, he said that was 100% unintentional. He then immediately asked what he could do going forward to make me feel more comfortable. He offered to stop carpooling with her and to cut down on contact with her except for work-related stuff. I told him I didn't have a problem with the carpooling because financially it does make sense. He spends a lot of money on gas, but maybe he could try to text and call her outside of work a little bit less. I also told him I would really love to meet her and her fiancé, and he enthusiastically agreed. He set up a hangout for the following weekend. The two of us and Liz and her fiancé all went out for drinks at a bar by our building they moved in by now. It was actually really fun. It turns out we all have a ton in common. Liz and I do very similar work, and we all have common nerdy interests. It was a little awkward at first, as meeting new people often is, but once we all got comfortable, we had a blast. From there, we have all become fast friends, and Liz and I have developed our own separate friendship too. We text often, go over to each other's places for dinner sometimes, and hang out on weekends. I can honestly say I really like Liz and her fiancé as a person and trust her 100%. I no longer have a problem with her friendship with my boyfriend at all. They do still carpool sometimes, but they've never hung out alone outside of work. It's always the four of us. I feel like a huge weight has been. Finally, I have a separate but slightly related update. My boyfriend is now my fiancé. Less than a month after I made my last post, he took me out for a really beautiful and romantic dinner. When we came home, our apartment was covered in roses and candles. I was so shocked I could barely move as he got down on one knee and proposed. I said yes and then cried for about 2 hours as we called all of our friends and family. It was absolutely perfect, and we are getting married next year. It turns out that Liz actually helped him plan the proposal, and that was part of why they were talking a lot too. Since she lives in our building now, he had all of the flowers, candles, champagne, and accessories shipped to her and kept at her place until he was ready for them. He even had her hold onto the ring the week before he did it. After he proposed, she came upstairs and took photos for us and cried with us. That was the moment I realized what a great friend she is to both of us. So communication saves the day again. We're all great friends now, and Liz and I have regular girls' nights to plan our weddings together.